I'm so happy to welcome Kellie Richardson to the Audio Garden today, author of The Art of Naming My Pain, already in its second edition. Welcome to the Listen and Be Heard Hour for readers and writers, Kellie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to meet you and just talk about the second edition. It was a interesting process revisiting sort of like a baby I already gave birth to.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute
Okay.
since it was an interesting process. And I think, that's a writer's
Yeah.
dream, really, to have a second
Mhm.
edition of any of their books published. I assume that means that the first run was sold out.
The first run was sold out, and it was coming up on about the fifth anniversary of it, which it's interesting how sometimes I feel like time flies and sometimes I feel like it stands still. But in between the first and second edition, I had gone through some pretty major life stuff. Um, and I am with Blue Cactus Press, which is a small press here in Tacoma, run by Chris Vega, who is an incredible human. And it's such a gift when your publisher is also a writer.
Yes, and I should
And
thank Chris Vega
yes,
for being the one to contact me to invite you to this
yeah,
show as well. So
yes.
you are on Blue Cactus Press, and go ahead.
Yes. Yes, I'm on Blue Cactus, and it's been this labor of love for Chris, and I was so honored to really like just be in this beautiful dance and relationship as they built up the press, and that was part of the second edition unfolding. Was we knew we did some good stuff with it, but there was still more to be done. We wanted to engage with the work in places and spaces we hadn't before. And as I mentioned, I had gone through some big life stuff. Both my um, the young people I grew and birthed and had the gift of raising were in their young adulthood, but I was also in a really intense medical journey. I was diagnosed with leukemia August of 2022. And then the process of that really transformed me, both on that biological level when you have leukemia, my leukemia, which was acute myeloid leukemia, and there wasn't many donors in the registry. And so I didn't have any relatives. And so I actually was granted the gift of life by umbilical cord stem cells of an anonymous baby boy. And so,
What a
first of
miracle.
all, that's just, yeah, first of all, it's such an incredible blessing, but it also really moves me to explore this concept of engaging with mystery, engaging with the things that will never kind of be solved or resolved in the ways that I would want to. So I can't call this baby, I can't call their family. Everything was very anonymous. So
Mm.
it was how do I alchemize that? So I've
Acknowledge it,
started to,
appreciate
yes,
it, sure.
yeah, acknowledge, honor, and then it also called me to look back at this book. Not only the title of Art of Naming My Pain, there was lots of layers of discomfort and terror and pain through a cancer journey, but also one of the kind of jokes I made, and that was one of the things I think I'll share with folks when it's time to read, was in the preface, just talking about what I thought I had um, visited and resolved by way of my pain or some of my demons. And after cancer, just kind of looking back and kind of laughing lovingly at myself the way you do at kids when they think they have it all figured out. So it was really
Right.
this labor of love to kind of revisit it. Um, and also walk that line. I think that many folks can relate to that, right? Especially where, when do you stop editing? What do you tweak? What do you leave alone?
Mm.
And why? So that was a lot of the working through the second edition and the editing process, is how much did I want to tweak or add, and how much did I want to just let be?
I'd like to mention that this book is sort of a visual work of art.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the way it looks to me, like the combination of the size and the
Yeah.
beautiful color prints of collages that you made.
Yeah.
It's,
Hmm.
it's sort of a combination between like a coffee table art book and a
Yes.
guidebook that you could, like
Yes.
a life guidebook, right? That you
Yeah.
could throw into your purse or even put
Hmm.
in a big coat pocket or something and have it
Yes.
there, like to guide you when you need
Yes.
it. And I love that. So I
Thank
wanted to
you.
mention that's a beautiful aspect of
Yeah.
this book, which for the video, I'm going to hold it up for a moment here.
Thank you. You know, it blesses me to hear you say that because that was part of the vision to the initial book was kind of that standard. It still had collage in there, but it was less of this sort of take and go and this um, just really an expansive definition of what a text can be. Um, I am someone that
It's a combination of
yeah,
like essays and poetry. And
right.
I have to say, there's some real like one-liner endings on these poems that kind of just hit you. So they're sparse, and they end with a bang. That would
Yeah,
be
thank you.
my quick
Yeah,
description of the poems in
yes.
there.
Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely a hybrid form. Yet another reason I really appreciate and I'm grateful for Blue Cactus is really supporting this process of blending different forms, and that the blending of those different forms isn't necessarily, at least I never thought of them as sort of defiant or resistant. I just thought this is the way I do stuff. But you're not always greeted with that vibe.
It comes
Um,
off that way maybe to people.
yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into
Sure.
the content
Sure.
of some of these essays and poetry because Um, you, I think what I appreciate most probably is, I guess raw is overused maybe, but you make yourself vulnerable in a raw kind
Hmm.
of way. You're just honest, and it's like that expression we let the cards fall where they may. That
Hmm.
was an expression.
Hmm.
My grandmother was a card player, and that was one of her expressions, right? And but I think it's very apt. And that's the feeling I get from this
Yeah.
book. And it made me question or wonder. I think myself as a writer, I don't always think about who I'm writing for. I
Hmm.
just maybe I'm writing for myself at first, even I don't know, but it made me think about that, like, and wonder, do you think about who you're writing for when you're
Yeah.
writing these? Because I have the feeling that you're writing for your people, your women, your girls,
Hmm.
and that you're not so concerned maybe about how other people might perceive what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's been a process, what you're talking about of um this grounding yourself in purpose or thinking about your intention in writing. And I think for me, this second edition in particular, and then the collection I'm working on right now, I'm really pushing myself to detach from that outcome and just connect with whatever the inspiration is, whatever the seed is. A dear friend of mine, we pick a word every year to help guide us because we are chronically tangential, just anxiety ridden humans. We just are. And the sensitivities get high and the care is deep. And so that means sometimes you're not necessarily as focused. But my word for this year is cultivation. And that is kind of another extension of this practice of just trying to drop in and just be divinely guided. Um, Often I was writing to say the unsaid. I think that lends itself to some of the rawness. Um, I am also kind of a chronic oversharer when I'm comfortable with someone, but I would find in some situations, poetry workshops, I'm working with other fellow writers that when you say the unsaid or you speak the kind of icky, darker truth, shame doesn't have space to grow, and I'm really, one of my core purposes, as I say, I'm divinely guided to serve love. I'm divinely guided to serve love. And much of that work in the last 10 years of my life has been, how do we disrupt shame?
Mm.
Um, Especially, it's just coming at many of us from all sides,
Yeah, you
especially
bring
those
it
that have
up.
different
It's sort of
identities.
a
Hmm.
recurring theme in the
Yes.
book.
Hmm.
And, black, I don't want to say black versus white, but in, like mirrors of each other, maybe
Yeah.
it is another theme of the
Hmm.
book. And, as I'm reading, as a white woman, I perceive things,
Yes.
from my
Yeah.
experience and
Hmm.
perspective. And I forget where I was going with this.
That's
I
okay.
lost my train of thought there for a
Okay.
minute. But
That's okay.
we were, I just think that it's so poignant the way you describe wanting to have a friendship with a white woman and yet maybe not wanting to have a friendship with a white woman, a true friendship. And you describe a really poignant situation that you find
Hmm.
yourself in with
Yeah.
a woman who you want to be a friend with.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it goes back around, though, to the art of naming our pain.
Yeah.
And, no matter how much, oh, I remember now where I was going with that is that,
Okay.
there's a lot of things that make me uncomfortable
Yeah.
and about, say, being white,
Hmm.
let alone trying to be friends with someone who's not white.
Right.
So we all have these things we have to name, and you were talking about all this shame, and so like we can be ashamed to be white,
Yeah.
or and then but then we need to delve into what is white. Actually, it's just sort of this blanket thing that people say, and
That
it's
somebody
the
made up. Yeah.
same for
Hmm.
black, right? Like you could
Yeah.
be a black South African is going to be have a very different experience from a black American in Texas, say.
Right.
So we all have our um, pain that we actually have to
Hmm.
name, and I think that that's extremely just so central to what you're saying and so important to say.
Yeah. I think that part of that piece around the shame and identity is, um, that I'm really pushing myself and others to keep, to resist that binary of good or bad, right or wrong. Either we're friends or we're not. Either we're, just this. It's to me, and I do sort of outside of writing, I do organizational consulting, I do coaching, and I specifically work with leaders that are trying to disrupt the same system that they must participate in to just keep the lights on. And that takes a toll on our humanity, it takes a toll
Right.
on our nervous systems. And especially when we're talking about issues of identity and um, having deep connection across race and across trauma, the naming of the thing, often are the fear-based response is, if I name the thing, it becomes real, or if I name the thing, that's permanent. And I'm really wanting to push us to think that the naming of the thing is just simply a truth. And I was listening to Martha Beck, who I'm kind of obsessed with right now. She's a coach, and what she was just talking about, the way that it's a core truth is it feels peaceful,
Mm.
even if the truth is hard, or it's painful, or to say, okay, Martha, you did hurt me. That still at its deepest level gives us some sense of calm or peace or resolve. And so I'm wanting the work that
Maybe
I
because you've gotten rid of the shame
exact
in
because you did
there.
it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that we are multitudes. So to your point of the woman who I am talking about in that essay, she is a dear friend. And there's so much data in my body and cells for herself and for me, that it is this line of, okay, we made a deep connection. I know we're friends. And then when when these situations come up out in the world, um, I'm even defaulting still to the binary. It's like, is she going to get it right or is she not? And then I start to grieve the friendship before she's even had an opportunity. So that's some of the swirl that happens that you will see kind of in that essay. So I think inviting this loving, compassionate truth telling that we are all multitudes, and to love um, ourselves and to love others, we've got to just accept even the dark stuff and know that it's not the totality of who we are.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I guess that's true in our relationships
Yes.
as well, right? And there's a comfort in which you also talk about, sort of this feeling of home that you have with people who you do have similar experiences with, and
Mhm.
that you can connect with on that level, right? But
Yeah.
somehow we need to also bridge those um, gaps in order to just address like our
Mhm.
huge issues, right? Like, how
Yeah.
can we even solve things like climate change, or,
Right.
accepting what's happening to women in one part of the world,
Mhm.
and not caring what's happening to them in another part of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think just stating the violence, right? But like acknowledging
Mhm.
um, what's happening, like just this need to keep talking about Palestine, to keep talking, to keep just, it's not like you said that we solve any problems by naming our pain, but we do get rid of that underlying shame.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
such a powerful message in your book.
Mhm. Thank
So
you.
I think it's an important thing for people to try
Yeah.
to wrap their heads around. I want to make sure that I'm getting to some of the all the things. Maybe I should give you an opportunity actually to say something to our audience that I have not asked you that you would like to say about your book.
Oh boy. I think one of the things I like about this book, and it links back maybe to what you said, is I really want my art to be what happens when creativity is liberatory, when it's a liberatory process, which is why there are these different forms in there. There's poetry, there's the prose, and then there's the visual art. Is my prayer is that the book is something you take with you. Actually, the collection I'm working on right now is a field guide of sorts. So this was kind of the little pilot of what that practice looks like,
Oh,
and I want to keep
interesting. I must have picked up
playing
on
with.
that
Yep, you
message.
did. So I really want to invite folks to engage with the book as a bit of a field guide, but also as evidence that your creativity, your humanity can come as it is, that it will come in these different forms. It might be a dot, it might be abstract, it might be literal, but each is a valid and important extension of who we are. And even one of the essay Art of Naming My Pain just talks about the way that naming and language can be such a powerful healing tool. It's not the only tool, but also I think at its root, it's about expanding the definition of language and what naming is. It could be about words. I'm a writer, so yes, I'm biased. I do love to find the right word. It's also why I err on the side of brevity. None of my work and even my visual art. Sometimes I have a few pieces that are kind of huge scale, but I love the intimacy of small work. Folks got to, they've got to lean in to look at it. I feel like there's a bit of an intimacy between the reader and myself, or the reader and the work, when things are smaller. So, to really, what are the ways we can invite ourselves to engage with the small and intimate things that we maybe take for granted? So, really inviting folks to pause, read one piece at a time, if time allows, but to really resist that urgency and engage with the little. There's a Adrienne Marie Brown, one of her principles of emergent strategy is small is all. Small is good,
Mm.
small is all.
So it's not really a book to be read linearly, if that's a word.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, it can
In a
be.
linear
Yeah, I've had some
fashion, it
folks.
could
Yeah,
be, but
yeah,
you
you
sort of
just
want people to savor it.
Yeah.
as they go
Yeah.
along. Maybe you're riding the bus and you read one
Right.
of the poems or think about it a
Right.
bit, and it will help you along with your day.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
this is a good time to ask you to read a little bit from the book.
Sure. Sure. I will play with. First, I'll just kind of read the preface, I think. Because I think it maybe gives an idea of sometimes I'll get asked, well, what's the difference between the first edition and the second, and why did you do it? So this may give it a little bit of context. When my publisher Chris suggested we do a reprint of the work, I felt a little flutter. It was the kind of flutter where it's unclear whether it's made of excitement or fear, of eagerness or dread. And then I remembered my newfound commitment to arrive at the moments of my life with an open heart and a trust in my ability to handle what comes. Cancer taught me that I can take devastating news and still recall the clearest, sweetest lesson of the past year and a half. Anticipating rather than entering is a misuse of my energy. This remembering to brought me back to my steps. 1, catch breath. 2, release breath. 3, greet flutter. 4, give it a head nod and push it lovingly to the soles of my feet to meet eager earth who always holds me. 5, activate hope to shoot roots from soles of feet into eager earth's center. 6, pause for effect. Warmth, chill, light, joy, whatever it is, welcome it. 7, conjure love and follow its lead. Remember, remember to remember. Remember to remember this path back and through these ruins. Rinse and repeat, and then remember. Anticipating rather than entering is a misuse of my energy. Enter. So that's just the first page of the preface, and I loved the remember to remember and the anticipating as a misuse of my energy was really two of the really core lessons of my cancer journey that even supported me in figuring out who I was after that. You know, stem cell transplants are you're literally regrowing your marrow from the inside out. So even trying to figure out who I was outside of sickness was a hard thing.
Mm.
And so it caused a lot of, and just the process, you know, God bless them, caregivers and doctors and, you know, my care team who were amazing people to protect my fragile state and the way I could get infections. You're on high alert all the time. I couldn't be around even houseplants for about 2 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're just on such high alert um, that calming my already kind of raggedy nervous system down. I was an anxious bug from the beginning of time, but reorienting that was hard. And so shifting from this place of anticipation to presence was the best way I could leverage my energy and even re-enter a place of creativity and imagination. Um, and I think as humans, we tend to think it's something outside of us. It's like a new thing that's going to help us heal. It's a new thing that's going to help us
When in
find our way.
fact, we need to
Just
remember
remember.
to remember.
That's right. Yeah.
That actually gave me chills when I read those lines, and I really vibed with that when I was
Thank you.
reading it.
I'm so
And I
glad.
mean, because, you know, and this theme also of, you know, what we pass on to our children, this pain
Mm,
that we get from our
yes.
parents, and we
Yeah.
pass it on to our children. And I'm very familiar of being in the middle of that whole dynamic. And, you know, as me and my children have come through some difficult times as adult children, this is one of the things that I keep reminding them and myself also is, you know, to recognize and remember, like
Yeah.
recognize how you feel and remember that when you feel that way, you have to do certain things for yourself to
Yeah.
find your balance, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so, I think those are some of the things that you address in this field guide to living life. Would you like to read one of the short poems for us still?
Sure. Um, I think I was flipping through when you kind of told me how to prepare, and one that I haven't read in a long time that I love that's actually, I think it's kind of short. It's actually the very last poem. And I wrote it, I was prompted by a good friend of ours to write a piece for Pride here in Tacoma to kick it off. And this was the result of that. And it's called Love Wins. The dead man says comparison is the thief of joy. But just this once, look to your left, then your right. Extend your unsure hand behind or in front of you to feel your way, to wrestle yourself free from the assumption of your unique misery. Surmise yourself silly. Lift the veil. I hate to ask, but you just must. Advancements may deem the human condition more complex. Oh, but baby, I assure you there is nothing new under the sun. We didn't invent or prevent any breaking news. An era catches fire as two spirits, two spirited, stunned by stinging secrets, find each other and another and another. Despite days devoid of plenty, there is abundance. I'm full. We are right minded at our smallest, before, between, and because of sister's wrath, father's sin, mother's fear, teacher's hate, pastor's lust. A fury of soul claps in hidden halfways, hallways. Hungry tongues are born at moonlight dances and coffee tables. Our love fits and flourishes, and sometimes we get stung, but our love is not a punishment. Not one of us is being punished. We are waves, soft, frantic, dependent on tides and laws laden with sloth and gluttony. We are dancing anyhow, no matter what. Our dogged breath endures, our mouths recycle demands of decency from satellite gatekeepers. We force their hands to open doors to life, to love, to joy, to freedom, to choice, to agency, to us, to them and him and her and you. And because of love, we always win.
That's a great place to end. I've been
Yes.
speaking with Kellie Richardson, the author of The Art of Naming My Pain on Blue Cactus Press in its second edition. Um, uh, how would you like people to communicate with you or to find out more about your book?
Sure. Yes, thank you for asking. And again, thank you for having me. Folks can follow me on Instagram at Words Paper Paint. And then I also am developing and playing with a lot of my work on my Substack. So that's under the same name as well, Words Paper Paint. So folks can follow along there. And I look forward to meeting new folks and connecting.
Thank you, Kelly. I have a couple more quick questions that we
Sure.
like to ask. I like to ask all my
Okay.
guests.
Sure.
And one is what's going on with banning books in Tacoma, and what has been your personal experience or viewpoint about that?
That's a great question. We actually have, I haven't gone to it, but we have one of our great local bookstores, King's, and some of the public libraries here in Tacoma will have banned book clubs where folks are specifically gathering to do that. The sort of the culture in Tacoma, we have this name, it's a little overused now, and now that we're getting gentrified, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, but we are called Grit City. We're a working class, we're right on the port. There's a lot of this sort of collective defiance and sort of savoring we're going to do what we want to do. And there's some really beautiful groups here who practice mutual aid. And so, I haven't felt, and it may have something to do with me not having kids in the school system anymore, but I'm not experiencing folks snatching things away from people I love. But I also feel like I'm keeping my circle to those that really live to engage with what's being hidden. They're actually motivated to do that. So I'm feeling that vibe. I just did a poetry workshop called Color Stories, where we were examining the way that color has been used, and a lot of authors of some of those banned works kind of came up. Um,
Mm,
I see people drawn to it, um, and recognizing that there's a reason why we're being steered
band.
away. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that. And the
Sure.
other thing is to put you on the spot a little bit and just
Oh boy.
ask you to give us a phrase or two using the phrase listen and be heard.
Listen and be heard. Listen and be heard. Even if your voice shakes without knowing it, you may be saving a stranger.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So good meeting
And I
you.
just want to say thank you for the blessing of your time here and that you healed and are able to be here with us today. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you, Kellie Richardson.
Thank you so much, Martha. Take care.
You too.